it feels really bad to feel like we're being ignored because we all want to feel valued. We all want to feel relevant. We all want to feel like people are interested in us and what we have to say. So when we get the impression that they don't, or maybe the very clear evidence that they don't, it can feel really bad. So if you have struggled with or are struggling currently with often feeling ignored, I want to talk today about some things that you might be unintentionally or subconsciously doing that are contributing to how other people are or are not responding to you. Now, this isn't about blaming or criticizing or saying that there's anything, fundamentally wrong with you. It could just be some habits, some things that you learned, some kind of unconscious patterns that you've gotten yourself into for any number of reasons, knowing that all behavior is purposeful. And so this is to help us get some insight and understanding so that we can start working on making some shifts or adjustments, seeing how that goes. And the goal is that when we become more aware of some of these things and start making some intentional changes, that we are ignored less and therefore feel better. Simple as that. But before that, if you're new here, welcome to our incredible little corner on the internet. It is so good to have you here. My name is Kristina, and I am a registered clinical therapist, a researcher, a coach, and the creator of my membership community, the Shift Society, where we are taking this work to a deeper level. You are being guided, supported, and doing this in community with other shifters and other humans committed to better for themselves, their lives, and their relationships. You can get more information about the Shift Society in the description below. And either way, I help heart-centered humans break through the crap that is holding them back so they can like themselves and their lives more every day. And as we talked about, it does not feel good to feel like we're being ignored. Now, maybe it is that you don't find that you're ignored at work, but you find that you're ignored with your friends. Or maybe you don't find that you're ignored with your friends, but you find that you're ignored within your family. Or maybe it is that you often feel ignored by most people, and maybe it can even feel like all people. So why could this be? What is going on here? I'm going to talk about 7 things that are possibly happening. Probably not all of them you are unconsciously doing, but taking a minute to reflect on each one of them and say, is this something that I can see? No, that's not something, but maybe something else in the list is. First one, we're going to get right into it. Often people have a tendency to ignore others when that person is talking too much about themselves and not really showing any interest in the other person. So if you have the habit and you notice yourself just talking a lot about yourself, and maybe this isn't about judging or criticizing, maybe this is just a habit. Maybe it's because you're feeling kind of nervous. Maybe you're scared of any awkward silences, so you keep talking. Maybe it's just, something that you're unconsciously doing for no reason that you know about, but it's something that's happening. And so often what does happen, and we notice that with us as well, if we are talking with someone who's always talking about themselves, we kind of glaze over because there's a thing in relationships that we all want, and that's reciprocity. We do often want to hear about other people, but we also want to feel heard. So if we're in a conversation with someone we never feel heard, we might just have the tendency to kind of glaze over and almost like disregard what we're saying because we sort of are losing interest because it's always about them and there's never really any space for us. So really just noticing with yourself, if you find that you're always or often talking about yourself in conversation, that could be a reason why someone might just kind of glaze over and ignore you. The opposite is also true. If we are never contributing to a conversation, if we are always just sort of holding ourselves back and out of fear, right? Could be for very good reasons. We're scared of saying the wrong thing. We're scared of offending someone. We're kind of overshooting with not wanting to make it all about us. So we make nothing about us. And then, we can kind of feel ignored because no one is really hearing us, but then really asking ourselves, am I contributing something? So can someone hear me if I'm not actually contributing anything? Or maybe I'm waiting for an invitation. I'm waiting for someone to ask me something about myself and nobody does. So they're ignoring me instead of saying, you know what, if I have something that I want to share about myself, I am going to insert that. I am going to show up. I am going to engage. I am going to be involved. I am going to let myself be seen. I am going to let myself take up space, not all the space, but I'm going to let myself be in this space as well. And allowing for that reciprocity, those two-way conversations. Some people are really great at asking questions and really drawing people out. And some people just assume that if someone has something to say, they're going to volunteer that information. So instead of waiting for an invitation, if not one is being offered, allow yourself to invite yourself into the conversation. The next thing that might be happening, why you feel like you're being ignored, is that if you do tend to be someone who talks a lot, maybe you're communicating in a way that other people can't follow very well. You're giving too many irrelevant details. You're going off on tangents. You're not bringing the point back to what you're originally talking about. And so people are sort of confused. They don't really know what's going on. And this can also happen too, that if you're talking, you might be having half the conversation in your head and only part of those words are coming out and you think everything is coming out, but don't really realize that you're sorting things out in your head, only sharing half the information. Again, like I said, sharing irrelevant details or not speaking in a concise way that other people can't follow. And so they might just be glazing over and ignoring you because they can't follow. They don't know what's going on. And so they might be kind of sitting there wide-eyed. You can tell they're not really listening. They're just sort of waiting for you to finish. You don't really feel heard, but it could really be because they don't understand. And so that's just a tendency when information is coming to us that we have no understanding of, we just glaze right over. Which goes to the next one, which is maybe you're talking about things, like this relates to this one, you're talking about things that aren't relevant to someone else. Maybe you are making sense. Maybe you are speaking in a clear and concise way, but if you are talking to someone who's really interested in arts or behavior or music, and you're talking to them about the intricacies of C+ computer language. Not that I'm speaking from experience at all. I don't even know what C+ is, but I know that it's a computer language. If someone starts talking to me about C+ or Java or whatever other computer language, I am going to glaze over. No matter how clear or concise their explanations are, it is completely irrelevant to me, and it kind of breaks my brain in not a good way to try to understand it. So I am just like, nope, not going there. And my brain will just glaze over and I'll just ignore what they're saying. So it could be as simple as that what you're talking about is not super relevant to them. I remember that when I had my first child and I would be hanging out with a friend that didn't have any children. I'd be talking about all these things that were so relevant and all the stuff that I was in about sleeping habits and eating habits and pooping habits of my child and things that I was right in the middle of it. And I remember talking to a couple of my single friends about this, and they were completely glazed over because it wasn't relevant to them. It was so relevant to me, but I kind of lacked that insight to be like, if I want someone to be really kind of connected to what I'm saying, there has to be some kind of connection to them. Maybe not something that they're necessarily going through themselves, but it has to be at least something that they are interested in. And so really just taking a step back with that, know your audience. Who are you talking to about what? And if you are talking about things that are completely uninteresting to someone else, doesn't mean they're not interesting, they're just not interesting to them or relevant to them, then it's a good chance that they are going to kind of glaze over and ignore you. Another reason that you might be being ignored is if you feel like, if others feel like you are criticizing too much. Like you are always looking for a problem. Like you are always kind of picking apart what they are doing or what they are saying. And now you might have great intentions. You don't want your friend or your loved one, or your family member, your partner to make a mistake. You want what's best for them. You want them to be okay. But if you are always sort of picking things apart and finding something that's wrong or finding something negative to say, human beings would just have the tendency to just block that out because we're like, you know what? I don't really want to hear all of these bad things. Not that most people aren't open to feedback or open to some criticism, but it has to be interspersed with support, with understanding, with curiosity, instead of automatically going into judgment, right? And thinking about that for yourself, who are the people that you tend to be most open to listening to? The people that are trying to understand you, the people that are there to support you, the people that are interested in you and are being, encouraging instead of critical. You might also find that when you are having conversations with people like that, you can receive some feedback from them, some constructive criticism, some, them pointing out maybe some issues that you haven't considered, some problems that you might encounter if you make that decision. You're probably going to be a lot more open to that if in general you feel like they are positive and supportive and encouraging. So just really taking a step back with that and reflecting on that and being like, you know what, even if I do see often problems or issues or things that could go wrong, and I want to point that out for people because I want what's best for them, just also recognizing that if it's happening at a ratio that is too high, then people are just going to have the tendency to glaze over and check out. So working on interspersing your support and your encouragement and your interest and your curiosity, interspersing that with any flaws or issues or criticisms that you might have, instead of interspersing the flaws or problems or criticisms with a little sprinkle of encouragement. If you tip the balance the other way, people are probably going to be a lot more open to listening to you. The next one, in this similar note, is if you tend to complain too much. Just human tendency that when someone is complaining all the time, we kind of block it out because it brings us down, right? It brings us down when someone is always talking about all their problems, always lamenting about something, always stressing, always worrying about something, because it's too much for another person to try to take it all on and try to be in the midst of all of that. It gets overwhelming. So then the tendency is to just block it out completely. And so that's why you can find if you're, talking to someone about your problems, two things can be going on. They can be just glazing over because it's just too much and they can't really do anything to help it or to fix it. And so they just are kind of like, okay, I don't really want to listen to this. And so maybe unconsciously they're kind of glazing over and ignoring that. Or they have so much of their own stuff going on that they can't be present for what you have going on because they have so much of their own stuff going on. And you even talking about all the things that you have going on is triggering them to remember all the things they have going on. And then they're so preoccupied with all of their problems that they are not able to really be present for you in your problems. Now, this isn't to say that we can never come to our friends or our loved ones with things that we're struggling with, but really being mindful of that. Am I always complaining? Am I always talking about things that are going wrong for me, things that are hard for me, things that I'm struggling with? Because the truth is, most of us have things that are not easy about being human. All of us have things that are not perfect or easy in our lives. All of us have pain that we might be struggling with or dealing with to a greater or lesser extent at different times, or significant burdens that we are trying to deal with in our own lives. So both things can be going on. If you are complaining a lot, the tendency of the other brain listening to the complaints is going to have the tendency to just glaze over and block it out because it's too much. Or the other thing to be going on is that the other person has so much of their own stuff going on that they just don't have the capacity to be there for what you have going on. Another thing, for my overthinkers, you might find that you think that you are contributing a lot to a conversation, but are really not contributing all that much because there's so much mental chatter going on in your brain, because you're always like thinking about what you're going to say and how you're going to say it, and wanting to make sure that you don't say the wrong thing or don't offend anyone, or that you're able to kind of represent what you're thinking and feeling accurately, and that nobody misunderstands you, that you're having all of this activity going on in your brain. And then when you do say something, it's maybe not that much. You're not offering that much. You're not sharing that much. It's too calculated. It's too prescribed. It's not personable or relatable enough because you've edited yourself so heavily that other people can't really connect to it. They don't really get it. It seems too polished, and they're like, I can't connect with that. And so then, because they can't connect with what you're saying, because it's kind of too edited, that you think that you're being ignored. You think that nobody cares. But the truth is, we think people are going to like us more if we are perfect. But that's just not the way that it is. We might admire someone who we think has it all together and is perfect in every way. But that's not the people that we connect with, because we don't connect with perfect. We connect with real and raw, because that's who each and every one of us are. None of us has it all together. None of us has it all figured out. Now, it's not to say that we should walk around just being a hot mess so that people will connect with us more. Again, we don't want to be the person that's always complaining and always talking about ourselves and always making it about ourselves, because that's going to have the opposite effect. But being authentic, being real, being honest, and creating that space for others to be the same. So really just checking yourself if you're like, you know what, people are kind of ignoring me, and it might just be because you have edited so heavily what you are saying that they're just not able to connect to it or relate to it. And so they can't form that connection and with you, and so you don't feel like you're being heard or valued or acknowledged. If you struggle with fully embracing who you are and showing up as who you are, if there's fear and there's overthinking, or you don't feel as confident or comfortable in yourself, because that's the other thing, is that people tend to enjoy speaking with people that are typically a little bit more positive, a little bit more comfortable with themselves, not perfect, right? Comfortable with yourself doesn't mean you're perfect. It means that you can admit to and own the things that aren't. You can be real about stuff, that you're not sort of always hiding or making excuses or feeling ashamed or keeping yourself small and hidden, that you are showing up in your authenticity and allowing people to connect with that. So becoming more of who you are without apology, not more perfect, but more of who you are without apology, without excuses, without keeping yourself ashamed or small or hidden. If that's something that you would like to do, I have a free guide for you. It's how to be yourself without apology. And that's for you in the description, how to be yourself without apology. It's going to walk you through some simple steps for that you can start working on immediately. It's completely free and it's completely available with the link in the description below. Let me know. Without going into self-criticism or self-judgment, just honestly acknowledging that, yeah, I guess this is something that I have done without even really realizing it, and it might be interfering with the real connections that I crave with others. So let me know if any of these we're like, yep. And let me know too what you are going to start working on and being more aware of and intentional with from here. If you want to do some deeper work on this, come into the Shift Society. You can get on the wait list in the description below. 2 things. Wait list for the Shift Society. Get the free simple steps to self-trust while you're waiting for the Shift Society to open. Let me know in the comment section below where you're at and what you are going to make as your intention from here. Always good to be with you. Always good to have you here. Till next time, take good care of yourself take good care of those around you. Bye for now.